My daughter looked me in the eye and told me she'd always loved her mother more than she ever loved me. 2 nights later, at 3 a.m., my phone rang from a downtown number I didn't recognize, and a calm officer asked if I was Chloe Ward's father. I thought the worst part would be hearing she'd gotten herself into trouble. But I was wrong. The worst part was discovering who had led her there, and why. Before I go on, if you're here listening to an old man sort through the pieces of his life, I'd be grateful if you'd subscribe and tell me where you're listening from. Every story I share carries a little bit of my heart, and your support, quiet as it may seem, means more to me than you'll ever know. Whenever you're ready, I'll continue. I wake up early these days. Not because I have to, but because an old house feels different in the morning, quieter, gentler, almost forgiving in its own way. Most mornings, I shuffle into the kitchen, put on the kettle, and listen to the pipes sigh themselves awake. It's a small ritual, but it reminds me that life keeps moving, even when people don't. My name is Ethan Ward, 63 years old, bad knees, decent coffee skills, and a heart that's been patched together more times than I care to admit. And for most of my life, every overtime shift, every bill paid just in time, every night of worry I kept to myself was for one person, my daughter Chloe. She used to sit at this very kitchen table, swinging her legs, asking me why jam tasted different on weekends. She thought I had a weekend jar. I didn't. I just slowed down enough to notice her smile. That was before the divorce, before her mother, Melissa, decided that life with me was too heavy, too routine, too real. She left with lighter suitcases and lighter promises, and somehow took most of Chloe's affection with her. Still, Chloe and I found our rhythms. Game nights, burnt grilled cheese experiments, little notes she'd hide in my toolbox whenever I fixed something that wasn't broken. I held on to those memories longer than I probably should have. When Chloe turned 22, she moved back in, just until she figured things out. Her words, not mine. I didn't mind. The house felt alive again. Her shoes by the door, her laughter drifting down the hallway whenever she video called her friends. But small cracks started showing, barely noticeable at first. A sigh when I reminded her about bills. An eye roll when I wondered if she'd thought about applying for jobs. And then a familiar sentence, one I knew didn't come from her. Mom says I should focus on my passions, not stress about deadlines. I didn't argue. Years with Melissa had taught me that arguing never changed her mind, it only changed Chloe's mood. So I kept the lights on, kept the fridge full, paid for her phone, her car insurance, her checkups, because that's what a father does. Or at least what I thought a father should do. Every Friday she'd pack a weekend bag, humming while she zipped it up. She'd spend 2 nights with her mother and return smelling like a high-end candle store I could never step foot in. Sundays were different. She'd walk in quieter, colder, carrying new ideas about how strict I'd become or how old-fashioned my expectations were. I tried talking. She tried not to listen. But I kept telling myself she was young, caught between 2 homes, 2 versions of love, 2 conflicting voices. She'd find her balance eventually. Kids do. Or so I hoped. Quiet mornings became my favorite time, the only time when the house felt like mine again. I'd make pancakes she never woke up early enough to eat, wrap them, leave them on the counter, pretend I didn't notice when they went untouched. Sacrifice is quiet like that. It doesn't complain. It just accumulates. One afternoon, I was clearing leaves from the back porch when I saw her through the sliding door, not watching me, just staring past me, as if the life I'd built wasn't a place she belonged. "Dad," she said softly, "Mom says you worry too much. She says you're stuck in the past." She didn't say it with anger, just detachment, and somehow that hurt more. I nodded, pretended the rake suddenly needed my full attention. There's a special kind of ache reserved for fathers, a kind that doesn't burst, it sinks. But then she smiled faintly and said, "I'll be home late. Ryan's picking me up." Ryan, Alyssa's partner's son, more swagger than sense. Every instinct in me tightened around that boy, but Chloe glowed around him. And sometimes love, blind, hopeful love, makes you swallow doubts you should speak aloud. So I let it go, like I let so many small things go. Little dismissals, little shifts in tone, little reminders that I was slowly being moved out of the center of my own daughter's world. I kept telling myself it was normal. She was growing, searching, exploring. All the things parents pretend not to fear. And for a brief moment, in that soft evening light, with the smell of rain drifting across the yard, I believed the distance between us was temporary. That she'd find her footing and return not just to the house, but to me. I didn't know it then, but that quiet porch, those wet leaves still clinging to my boots, that was the last real peace I'd feel for a long, long time. Because the storm was already forming, and its first crack of thunder would come from her own mouth. The betrayal didn't hit like lightning. It arrived quietly, a slow leak in the foundation of our lives. One small drip at a time. It happened on an ordinary Tuesday evening. No drama, no warnings. Just a simple night where I heated leftovers and hoped Chloe might sit with me for a few minutes. She came home late, keys clinking against the doorframe. No hello, no tired smile. Just a straight walk to the fridge, grabbing the container of food I'd saved for her. She ate standing up, scrolling through her phone, her face lit by the screen, not by being home. "Chloe," I said gently, "we need to talk about your expenses." She didn't raise her head. "Dad, don't start." I kept my voice steady, measured. "Your car insurance renewed. The rate went up, and the utilities." She dropped her fork with a sharp sigh. "Why are you always counting things? Mom says you obsess over money like it's the only language you speak." The words hit harder than the tone. Not because they were cruel, but because they weren't hers. They belonged to Melissa. I folded my hands on the counter. "I'm not obsessing. I'm asking you to take responsibility. Just a little. $50 toward groceries. That's all." She gave a short, cold laugh. "Ryan says you micromanage because you're lonely. Mom left for the same reason." Something inside me shifted. Not anger, not shock. A quiet recalibration, like a compass realigning itself after years of spinning. I stood slowly, leaning on the counter for balance. "Chloe, everything I've done has been for you. I'm just asking for help with a few small things." She turned toward me, arms crossed, her voice too calm, too practiced. "You want the truth?" I nodded. She set her phone down. Her eyes didn't soften, not even a little. "I've always loved Mom more. She understands me. She doesn't make me feel like a burden. She doesn't treat me like a bill." The room stilled, a silence heavier than anger. I didn't shout. I didn't plead. I just felt something hollow out inside me, a space I didn't know was there. "Is that really how you feel?" I asked quietly. She shrugged. "It's just the truth. Don't make it dramatic." But it was dramatic, just not to her. She walked down the hallway and closed her bedroom door with a soft click. Not a slam, not a flare of emotion. Just final. I stared at the empty chair across from me, the one she used to climb onto to show me her drawings, the one she used to wobble on as a child just to say, "Daddy, look at me." Now she couldn't look at me at all. I sat down, rubbing my thumb over the rim of my mug. The tea had gone cold, but I didn't move to warm it. And I didn't know why, but the stillness in my chest felt heavier than the words she'd thrown at me. But that wasn't the worst part. Not even close. 2 days passed. Short words. Short glances. Long silences thick enough to sit between us at every meal. I didn't bring up the $50 again. Didn't touch the subject of responsibility. Didn't push for a single conversation. I just waited, and hoped, and tried to breathe through the ache. Then came the night that cracked everything open. It was 3:07 a.m. My phone buzzed violently on the nightstand. 3 missed calls, 2 voicemails. All from an unknown downtown number. I pressed play. Her voice came through, shaking, panicked, barely holding itself together. "Dad, please, please answer. I'm in trouble. I need money. Don't ask questions. Just bring $4,000. Please, Dad, please." I called her back. No answer. Another voicemail. Another plea. A different amount this time. 3,000. Then silence. A silence that wrapped around my chest until my heartbeat felt too loud in the room. I stared at the phone, my hands trembling. And for the first time in my life, I didn't move. I didn't rush. I didn't grab my keys. I didn't step into the storm she had walked into. I left her a single message. One steady sentence. "Call your mother." I set the phone down and sat in the dark as the hall light flickered softly above me. My heart didn't break that night. It simply quieted. Like it was conserving its strength for something it knew was coming. And that's when I felt it, a line being drawn somewhere deep inside me. A line I didn't intend to cross anymore. That night, something in me went very, very quiet. And that's when I knew I would not stay silent anymore. I didn't sleep after those voicemails. Not a minute. I just sat in my old armchair, the one with the worn patch where my elbow always rests, and listened to the house breathe around me. The silence felt heavier than any shouting match could have been. It had weight, shape, memory. Every photo frame, every coat on a hook, every mug on a shelf, all of it looked unfamiliar, like artifacts of a life I'd tried to build, but somehow mishandled by loving too quietly. Around sunrise, the phone rang again. Not Chloe this time. A measured, steady voice. "Mr. Ward? This is Officer Daniels with the downtown precinct. Your daughter, Chloe Ward, is here. She asked that we contact you." My heart didn't drop, it sank, slow and deep, like slipping underwater. "Is she hurt?" I barely recognized my own voice. "No, sir, not physically, but we do need you to come down." No father waits after hearing words like that, not even the tired ones. The city felt unfamiliar that early, fog stretching low across the pavement like it was hiding something I wasn't ready to see. Inside the station, they led me to a small room that smelled like cold coffee and old carpet. Chloe sat at the table, hair tangled, mascara smudged, hands trembling in her lap. For a second, she looked 5 years old again, lost, scared, searching for me without saying it. "Dad," she whispered. Before I could step toward her, Officer Daniels cleared his throat gently. "Your daughter accumulated about $4,800 in gambling debt at an unlicensed gaming lounge. They called us when she couldn't pay. She's not being charged for now. Gambling. My daughter. In a backroom gaming club." I blinked, trying to fit the pieces together. "And she wasn't alone," the officer added. "She came with a young man, Ryan." Ryan. The name alone tightened every muscle in my chest. Melissa's partner's son. Full of charm, empty of consequence. "Ryan left before we arrived," the officer said. "Of course he did. Boys like him always vanish right before responsibility arrives." I looked at Chloe. Her chin quivered. She wouldn't meet my eyes. After paperwork, after assurances, after a quiet thank you, they released her into my care. She followed me out like a shadow, small, frightened, trying not to disappear. She curled on the couch the moment we walked in, knees tucked to her chest, arms wrapped tight around herself. Her breathing came in shallow waves. I sat across from her, not speaking, not lecturing, just being there. After a long stretch of silence, she whispered, "I didn't mean what I said the other night." She didn't specify which part. She didn't need to. Some wounds don't require labels. They announce themselves. I let out a breath I'd been holding for days. "Chloe, I don't know what led you here, but I need you to tell me everything." Her voice cracked open. "Dad, I didn't think it was real gambling. Ryan said it was easy money. He said you'd never help me chase my passions, that you'd just control me like always." I closed my eyes, not because I couldn't bear to look at her, but because hearing your child repeat someone else's poison is a unique kind of heartbreak. She kept talking. Shaky, broken, honest. "When I lost, he said he'd help me. Then he left me there. He just left." Her face crumpled. I didn't know what to do. I panicked. "Dad, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." I didn't rush to comfort her, not out of coldness, but because something inside me whispered, "Let her see the truth before you try to heal it." She wiped her eyes. "Are you angry?" I shook my head slowly. "No," I said. "I'm tired." That word seemed to wound her more than anger ever could. "Tired of watching you listen to people who do not love you the way I do. Tired of being your father only when you're scared, and not when you're safe." Her gaze fell to her hands, fingers twisting in her sleeves. We sat like that, a quiet grief resting between us like an old blanket no one wanted to fold away. But somewhere in that silence, something inside me shifted, not anger, not resentment. Resolve, a quiet, steady resolve that rose from a place deeper than fear or heartbreak. I began to think, very carefully, because the man she believed she could manipulate had been fading for years, and the father who loved her enough to finally protect her, with clarity, not softness, was just beginning to rise. The house was quiet. The next morning, too quiet. Like it was waiting for me to choose what kind of father I was going to be. Chloe slept late, still curled into herself, as if the night had folded her into a smaller version of the young woman she tried to be. I stood by the kitchen sink, hands wrapped around a mug that had long gone cold, and stared out at the yard I'd raked 100 times. The leaves looked different that morning, not messy, not forgotten, just ready to be cleared. That's how my heart felt too. For 30 years, I'd been the kind of man who fixed everything silently. Sink repairs, school fees, broken hearts, bruised confidence, unpaid balances. But now, this was different. This required something else. Not anger. Not punishment. Clarity. I needed to show my daughter the weight of choices, without shouting, without slamming doors, without becoming the villain she'd been trained to see in me. And so, I began. I didn't call Chloe's mother first. I called the officer from the night before. "Officer Daniels," I said quietly, "you mentioned the gaming lounge was unlicensed. Are there any records tying my daughter to them?" He was cautious with his words. "There's no criminal charge, Mr. Ward, but there is a report. It won't hurt her unless she ends up involved again." I thanked him. That was enough. Sometimes protection comes from knowing what danger looks like on paper. For years, I'd let money move like water in this house, flowing wherever it was needed without asking who left the taps open. I opened my laptop, signed into accounts Chloe never asked about, sorted bills she never knew existed, and I did something I never thought I'd have the resolve to do. I separated her finances from mine. Phone plan? Moved to her name. Car insurance? Transferred. Streaming accounts, utilities, medical copays, all shifted, one by one, onto the shoulders she'd insisted were grown enough to carry dreams, not out of cruelty, out of responsibility. The kind I should have taught sooner. I called Melissa. She answered on speaker, her habit, not mine. "Ethan, why are you calling this early?" Her voice still had the same softness that once convinced me she loved me, before she convinced herself otherwise. "I'm calling about Chloe," I said. A pause. A heavy one. "What happened?" "She's safe," I began, "but she racked up nearly $5,000 in gambling debt with your stepson's influence." Another pause, this one sharper. "She told me you'd been encouraging her to ignore responsibility, that you told her I use money to control her." Silence. Then, in a thin, defensive voice, "She needs freedom, Ethan." "No," I said quietly. "She needs honesty." I didn't raise my voice. I didn't accuse. I simply laid out the facts. Her daughter's panic, Ryan's disappearance, the early morning police call. And then I said the words I'd been holding for years. "You don't get to guide her and leave me to clean up the aftermath." Melissa exhaled sharply. "So what do you want?" I looked out the window at the pale morning light crawling across the yard. "I want us both," I said, "to stop pretending love is a soft couch she can collapse into after every bad choice. We are not doing her any favors." She didn't agree. She didn't argue. She simply ended the call. And that told me everything I needed to know about how alone I truly was in teaching Chloe what life costs. Around noon, Chloe emerged from her room, hair messy, eyes puffy, face half apologetic but unsure of its welcome. She sat beside me on the couch, her hands clasped tightly. "Dad, are you still mad?" Mad. What a small word for such a deep, aching truth. "No," I said gently. "I'm not mad." She lifted her eyes, confused. "But things will change." She froze. "What do you mean?" I took a breath. Measured. Calm. The breath of a man who had spent all night deciding what kind of father he would be next. "You need to start standing on your own feet, Chloe. Financially. Emotionally. Responsibility can't be something you borrow when you're scared and ignore when you're safe." She swallowed hard. "You're cutting me off." "No," I said softly. "I'm letting you grow." Her eyes filled. "Dad, I won't survive." "Yes," I whispered. "You will, and you'll finally understand that love isn't a shield from consequences. It's what gives you the strength to face them." A tear rolled down her cheek, not from fear, but realization. She opened her mouth, wanting to say something, anything. But before she could, my phone buzzed on the table. A number I didn't recognize. A number that would shift everything from planning to execution. I stared at the screen, heart steady now, steady in a way it hadn't been for years. The caller ID flashed again. The stage was set. All I had to do was wait. The unknown number buzzed again, persistent. Sharp. Like a tap on the shoulder from a truth that had finally arrived. Chloe watched me, eyes still swollen from tears, fingers twisting anxiously in her sleeves. "Aren't you going to answer it?" she whispered. I didn't rush. I let the phone ring twice more, long enough for my mind to settle, long enough for the moment to stretch into something deliberate. When I finally picked up, a man's voice greeted me. "Mr. Ward, this is Detective Harris, following up regarding the unlicensed gaming lounge incident. We need to clarify a few details." Chloe's breath caught. Her whole body stiffened. "Yes," I said calmly. "I'm available to talk." The detective spoke evenly. "We've identified a pattern with your daughter's acquaintance, Ryan Carter. He's been involved in other cases where young adults were encouraged to gamble under false assurances." Chloe covered her mouth, a tremor running through her. "Is my daughter in danger?" I asked. "Not directly," he replied. "But she's been used, and we need to document everything to prevent further cases." I thanked him, asked if there would be follow-up, and ended the call. Chloe's voice shook. "Dad, are they going to arrest me?" "No," I said softly. "But the truth is at your doorstep now, and this time, you're going to open the door." She stared at me like she was seeing a version of me she'd somehow forgotten, the father who stood tall long before she saw him bend. Later that afternoon, Detective Harris arrived at the house. Chloe sat on the couch, hands trembling in her lap, and I placed a glass of water beside her before stepping back, not shielding her but standing with her. The detective was patient, kind, but professional. "Miss Ward," he said gently, "we need your statement. We're not here to punish you. We're here to understand what happened so others don't fall into the same situation." Chloe looked at me, and for once, she didn't look for rescue. She looked for courage. She began talking, haltingly at first, then with more clarity. Everything spilled out. How Ryan pushed her into the lounge, how he promised easy winnings, how he vanished the moment she owed money she couldn't pay. While she spoke, I kept my hands folded, breathing slow, steady. The detective nodded thoughtfully. "Thank you, Chloe. Your statement helps a great deal." When he left, the house fell into a deep, reflective silence. Not uncomfortable, just honest. She turned toward me, eyes wet. "Dad, I don't deserve your help." I hesitated, not to wound her, but to let the truth land clearly. "No," I said quietly. "You deserve the truth. And the truth is, help isn't something you get instead of responsibility. It's what you receive after you've shown you're ready to change." She swallowed hard. "I'm ready." I nodded. For the first time in a long time, I believed her. Revenge, for me, was never about humiliation. It wasn't about showing Chloe her failures or watching her fall. It was about removing the illusions that had misled her. It was about pulling away the soft cushion that let her ignore consequences while others filled her head with lies. So I made one final call, the one that mattered most. I called Melissa. When she answered, her voice was cool. "Ethan, I'm busy." "I'll be brief," I said. And I was. I told her everything. The gambling, the police, the debt. The night Chloe cried in a station room because the people she trusted had led her toward danger she didn't understand. But the revenge wasn't in the facts. It was in what came next. "From now on," I said calmly, "you will not undermine me. You will not dismiss my boundaries to make yourself look gentle. You will not teach her that love means escaping responsibility." She was silent, not defensive, not angry, just silent. "No more splitting her loyalties," I continued. "No more using my support as a cushion for your freedom. If you want to guide her, you carry the weight of your words." Still silence, and then a quiet exhale, almost a surrender. "You're right," she said. "I didn't see it." "I know," I replied softly. "But now you do." And that was the moment, soft, steady, without shouting or blame, that the balance shifted. Not in my favor, not against hers, but toward Chloe, where the truth finally had room to breathe. That evening, Chloe sat beside me on the back porch. No screams, no distractions. Just a daughter who finally understood what love looked like when it stood its ground. "Dad," she whispered, "thank you for not giving up on me." I looked at her profile in the fading light, older than I remembered, but somehow smaller too. "I didn't stay silent to hurt you," I said. "I stayed silent so you could finally hear yourself." She leaned her head on my shoulder, something she hadn't done since she was 12. And in that soft, breathless moment, I realized something I'd been waiting to feel for years. And in that silence, I finally felt free. I've replayed that week in my mind more times than I can count. The night the calls came in, the quiet walk into the police station, the look on my daughter's face when she realized that the people she trusted most had pushed her into a darkness she couldn't navigate. And in those memories, I keep returning to the moment she told me, without hesitation, that she loved her mother more. For a long time, those words clung to me like damp clothes, cold, heavy, unshakable. But now, I see them differently. She wasn't choosing her mother. She was choosing the version of love that asked nothing of her. No boundaries, no accountability, no growth. And sometimes the only way a child learns what real love is when the softer, easier version finally collapses under its own weight. When the police called about her gambling debt and the world she trusted cracked open, she didn't need anger from me. She needed clarity, steadiness. A father who wouldn't shout, but also wouldn't shield her from the consequences that were finally hers to face. That was the moment I understood what true responsibility looks like. Not fixing everything, not softening every blow, but guiding someone you love toward becoming a person who can stand upright on their own. I didn't win anything in this story. I didn't triumph. I didn't prove a point. What I gained was far quieter and far more important. I gained peace, a peace that comes from knowing that loving someone doesn't mean rescuing them. It means releasing them into the shape they're meant to grow into. And now, when I think of the title of this story, My Daughter Said She Loved Her Mother More, I don't feel the old ache anymore. I just feel grateful that love, when it finally found its footing, returned to me in a form that was honest and earned. Respect, once lost, can be reclaimed if you're willing to wait for the right moment. Before you go, tell me something. If you were in my shoes, would you have done the same? And if this story meant something to you, I'd be grateful if you'd subscribe for more quiet truths like this one.